announcements before we get started here. You're joining us in our regular Sunday sit. That's every Sunday via Zoom, 4:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. Today, Ian Challis will be leading the Dharma talk. We also meet on Tuesdays, 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Zoom. That's our Meditation as Refuge group. Valerie Couson will be leading the next one. Wednesdays, we have our peer-led silent just sit. That is every Wednesday on Zoom, 5:30 p.m. to 6:15 p.m. And Fridays, we have our loving kindness group, our meta group. Ian will be leading this next one, of course. And that is every Friday on Zoom, 4:30 p.m. to 5:15 p.m. We also have our, excuse me, we also have our intro to meditation class. That's on the first Saturday of every month. The next one is going to be on January 7th. The suggested donation for that class is $20. That's of course a suggestion. You can, whatever is your means, whether that be more or less. That is on Zoom, and Ian will be leading the next one as well. It's just chock full of Ian lately. Oh, and we have a great opportunity to practice in person as community at a residential retreat in Damadina. That is February 17th to 20th in Joshua Tree, the Damadina Retreat Center. Ian Challis will be leading it as well with Fresh, Lev White, and Arena Wiseman. It's for this community. It's our retreat for the ICD community. It's called Sangha, Reclaiming Connection, Reclaiming Community. And it's a great opportunity to practice in person in a residential setting. I'll be posting a couple of links into the chat for how to get in touch with us if you want to offer your services to volunteer, your time, your skill, your labor, and also if you want to offer financial donations as well. Those are always appreciated. With that, I will leave it to Ian. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adrian. Really appreciate the announcements, and thank you for hosting us tonight. And thanks, people, for being here. I really appreciate you showing up, and wasn't sure how many people would show up, and I'm glad we're here. And just a little bit more about that retreat, like if that's something that has piqued your interest, it actually is full now, and there's a waiting list. And so Mary and I and Jokai are talking about doing another retreat in May, where the three of us would be the retreat teachers, and it'd probably be a 3-night retreat. So if you kind of are interested, you might want to tuck that away. We haven't figured out dates yet or cleared it with the board or anything, but it's incubating. So, and this is where we need to start getting creative to figure out, like, how can we have some in-person, practice together to go along with this practice that we do together on Zoom. And so that's probably going to be what we figure out this year at ICD and we do together. So just really want to welcome you again. And if you come from a background in the Christian tradition, I wish you a very blessed Christmas. And just want to say, because we used to say it all the time and when we met in person, just how welcome all of us are in this space, whether it's a physical space or on Zoom. And we welcome all of who we are, all of our experiences and ways of identifying our personalities, our racial, gender, cultural, sexual identities, our religious backgrounds, our financial abilities, our cognitive abilities, whatever it is that we're experiencing or however we identify, it is welcome in the practice. We are not trying to smooth everything out. We are trying to live with what's here skillfully and be awake to what is here, to be intimate with what's here. And, since it's Christmas, I just want to say, you don't have to call yourself a Buddhist to be here. And the Buddha didn't seek to create a religion. And I understand that Jesus also didn't seek to create a religion. But instead, they both taught ways of interacting with what's here to lead to freedom or more happiness or more grace. So, yeah. And because of the holiday, when we met as teachers to talk about the program for this month, we decided let's do a little bit shorter on Christmas Day. So it's probably going to be more like an hour. We'll still have our regular sit for probably about 25 minutes, and then I'll do a shorter Dharma reflection than normal, and we'll see where we go from there, but probably hour, hour and a quarter. Um, but so important, and so, especially in these days and weeks and toward the end of the year, it can just be such a beautiful refuge to spend some time meditating together, on our own, but also in community with others, to just feel the beauty of our intentions multiplied by the people that we are with, the people who also care about this radical non-doing. So connecting in silence together. Okay, so I do want to appreciate the holiday, in the sense that whether or not we observe Christmas, that there is comfort and joy in the possibility of awakened ones, the possibility of great teachers or bodhisattvas or beings of great love who have seen through the veils, seen through the mists, and then dedicate their lives to the well-being of others out of great compassion and love. And that is something truly, truly, truly to remember and celebrate in this world, that there are such beings, and our own potential to move in the direction of the grace and the beauty and the care of those beings. So what Buddhism is a way of looking at the world, of really looking deeply. It's a system of thought and practice that are intended to help us see reality as closely as possible and as clearly as possible, and to live with as much peace and compassion as we can. And it's not necessary, and I love this, to give up your religion or your faith practices or your skepticism or anything to practice Buddhism. To quote Thich Nhat Hanh, elements of the Buddha's teachings can be found in Christianity, Judaism, Islam. He writes, there are many, many Christians who practice Buddhism and they become better Christians all the time. In my retreats in Europe and America, there have been Catholic priests and Protestant ministers receiving the teaching and practicing formally. And they don't see any conflict between the teaching of the Buddha and the teaching of Jesus. So the Dalai Lama was asked by someone who had the great fortune of asking the Dalai Lama a question, and his question was, which religion is best? Can you imagine? You can ask the Dalai Lama anything you want, and you ask the Dalai Lama which religion is best. Okay, well, that's what happened. And the Dalai Lama responded, I am not interested, my friend, about your religion, or if you are religious or not. What really is important to me is your behavior in front of your peers, family, work, community, and in front of the world. Remember, the universe is the echo of our thoughts and our actions. So it's how we are in the world. That's what's important, not how we label our practice, but that we do practice and that it changes how we relate. And, Buddhism never requires us to say, I am a Buddhist. And it doesn't require us to say, I'm not a Buddhist either. The Buddha only asks that we look for ourselves. So most spiritual traditions seem to recognize some kind of possibility of liberation, some means toward freedom, a possibility of awakening, grace, enlightenment. And many traditions teach that this is possible for all beings. I I believe, at least the way I grew up, that Jesus taught this and that the Buddha taught this, that all beings can wake up, all beings can know peace. So let's move into our practice period, and I'll offer a few invitations as we move into the silence together. And if you are, have your own way of practice that's comfortable and effective for you, please feel free to tune the sound of my voice out. It'll just be a few moments before we move into silence. But if you find this supportive, I'll just offer a few thoughts. And first, I just want to encourage some joy, because that can be so supportive of our meditation practice. Perhaps just some joy at showing up and being here with others and willing to practice, and some joy perhaps in acknowledging the possibility of awakening, some joy in the possibility of awakened beings and their gifts. And that's the thing about the gifts of awakened beings, is that we can feel them thousands of years later. And acknowledging your own places of growing freedom, a freedom that is independent of conditions. There's power in this practice, power to transform. So, if you'd like to, um, you can use an anchor for your awareness, as we often do. You might like to stay with the breath, the usual invitation, or you might like to connect to the changing soundscape wherever you are. Or you might like to rest with the sensations of touch, the body being held by earth, the places of contact, the feet, the hands, the buttocks. But seeing if you would like to identify an anchor for this present moment. Sometimes I think of this like a through line, like a place to gather attention as we move through the practice. So sometimes the image of a train is helpful for me, as though like the track is the breath or sound or sensation. And I keep moving forward, letting that be the rails. And from time to time, I get lost in looking out the window and seeing what's out there. And then I remember I can come back, I can gather attention, come back to this track, pay attention to this forward movement, gathering attention. And knowing that I can do that again and again and again, that I can rest in this present moment. It doesn't have to be a lot of effort. Just choosing to stay on the track or remember the track that I'm on. So let's move into our period of quiet together, and I'll ring the bell one time to start and 3 times at the end. Thank you for your practice. Really beautiful to be with you. Let's take a 3-minute personal break. Take care of moving the body, anything that you need, and I'll ring the bell in a few minutes to signal us to come back. So, yeah, got a timer buzzing for the 3 minutes. Um, Yeah, so tonight I want to talk about a short talk, but talk about the gifts of the practice, the gifts that we receive from this thing we do called practice, and the gifts that we give or bring into being from that support of our practice. So, like everything in life, there's an inhale and an exhale. We give and we receive. We are nourished and we nourish others. We're supported and we support. So when I was a young kid, like about 6 years old, I think, I remember at Christmas being so excited by the presents that were stacked up under the Christmas tree that I literally vomited on the floor in front of the tree because I was so excited. Because I was going to get stuff. And that's what it was all about for me. I'm going to get things. And I was an only child. And so I think my parents sometimes went a little overboard in the gift giving. They made up for it in other ways, let me tell you. But there always seemed to be a lot of gifts. But that image of my excitement and even my surprise at that young age, like, whoa, this is an extreme reaction. That sense of like excitement about what I'm going to get, really, I noticed it, like even as a little kid. And it wasn't very long after that that I started like recognizing, oh, there's more to this. It's not just all about me getting stuff. I learned something about generosity by watching myself. I still wanted things, of course, but I started to place a little less emphasis on what I was getting and started to think about, what I could give as well. How I could stretch my little handful of dollars and quarters and creativity to create gifts that I thought would delight and bring joy to my parents. Really lovely, totally useful things like the ashtray that I made my mom in the shape of a face, and you actually put your cigarettes out by stuffing them into the nostrils or the mouth of of the face. And I gave this to my mother, who was a complete lifelong non-smoker, and never saw it again. I have no idea what happened to it. But I began to understand the balance, the joy in giving, and that healthy desire to kind of complete the cycle, to reciprocate the inhale and the exhale. And I began to find and know joy in giving. And this is a beautiful lesson that we learn in life, and most of us get it fairly early. But a lot of us get to quite an advanced age and still don't truly know the joy in giving. Our culture reflects that. Get the most for the least. And it seems like, I was reading about CEO to worker pay, and in the 50s, 1950s, it was 20 to 1. So the CEO earned 20 times what the average worker was paid. And now it's something like 350 to 1. So the question seems to have shifted from how much is enough to how much can I get to how much can I get away with. And fortunately, many of us also understand and value giving. We've reached that second level, yay us, where we truly realize some interconnection, the mutual benefits of giving. And then there's a third level, and it took me quite a long time to realize that gifts received and offered not only occur externally, but internally as well. What is it that I'm giving myself? What are the gifts that I offer to this being right here, the horse that I rode in on, as I like to say? Recognizing the importance of our self relationship is something that we all know. After all, we do things to take care of ourselves. We meditate, we journal, maybe we do yoga, we exercise, we try and eat well, try and reduce stress. And I'm assuming that pretty much everyone on our Zoom tonight has some awareness and practice around self-care, because otherwise you probably wouldn't be here. But for many of us, it's a journey that we are still taking. It is for me, for sure. Coming to this place of recognizing and remembering, that's an important part of it, that I can give to this one, that I can give this one right here, the gifts of kindness and compassion, the gifts of the practice. So Jack Kornfield famously said, if your compassion does not include yourself, it's incomplete. And it's not just giving to yourself. Again, there's the receiving part as well. Both the inhale and the exhale, the giving and the receiving, even in that internal exchange, the giver and the receiver need to be present. We can invite them to be present. The states of mind of generosity and receptivity. And sometimes we may be quite good at offering ourselves opportunities for growth and health, coming to practice, being disciplined about that, going to the gym, taking an hour to read and relax, going for a walk, creating all of these opportunities for our well-being. But then how do I receive those gifts? Do I receive them with full respect for the intention and generosity of the giver, even when it's myself? Or is there a layer of judgment or self-shaming or I should, rather than accepting, here, this is for your well-being, may this be for your well-being? Do I value each gift with grace and mindfulness of what's being given, like I would from a dear friend? Oh, thank you. You really thought about me, and you offered this to me for my benefit. Thank you. Or is the gift somehow less important because it's from me? So it's a sign of spiritual maturity to treat ourselves as kindly as we do others. We know that. To acknowledge the value and worth of the gifts and love that we can give to ourselves. So Christine Neff, who wrote a book called Self-Compassion and teaches self-compassion, wrote this: self-compassion, by definition, involves the same qualities. First, it requires that we stop to recognize our own suffering. Not that we stop recognizing it, but that we actually stop to recognize our own suffering. We can't be moved by our own pain if we don't even acknowledge that it exists in the first place. Of course, sometimes the fact that we're in pain is blindingly obvious and we can think of nothing else. More often than you might think, however, we don't recognize when we're suffering. Much of Western culture has a strong stiff upper lip tradition. We are taught that we shouldn't complain, that we should just carry on. If we're in a difficult or stressful situation, we rarely take the time to step back and recognize how hard it is for us in the moment. And so I think this awakening to our own pain, to the dukkha, which is what the Buddha used to do was the word the Buddha had for suffering, which sort of means unsatisfactoriness, the rub of life. But awakening to that is the call that brings us to practice, the awareness of and the compassion for our suffering, our wounds and our bruises and our broken places. So remember, we're here to look deeply at what's here, not to smooth it all over and pretend that there's nothing going on. So in doing this, we awaken ourselves to the Buddha's first noble truth, that suffering, dukkha, unease, dis-ease with life is present in our experience, and that it is a universal experience. This is wisdom. And the wish to alleviate suffering, self-compassion, leads us to explore. So it's a gateway. Is there a way to lessen our pain? Is there even a way to extinguish it altogether? And this is the Buddha's great gift to us. These Four Noble Truths, the first noble truth of the universal nature of suffering, something for us to understand and look at deeply. The second noble truth, the knowledge that we gain through examination and experience, that suffering is caused by clinging, attachment, or aversion. And the third noble truth, that it is possible to suffer less. It is possible to completely awaken. And then the fourth noble truth that we looked at in October and November, the Eightfold Path. These are the technologies, the means to let go of clinging and aversion, to bring more freedom into our life. Wise view, intention, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration, these places that we talked about that are invitations to practice, invitations to develop, and that support each other as we develop them, becoming stronger and stronger and able to let go more and more of what binds us, what entangles us. This is the Buddha's gift. This is his answer to the question of suffering. So how will I receive that gift? What will I do with it? When Gautama became awakened, liberated, enlightened, he gave the gift of his teachings freely for the rest of his life. That's all he did, for no other reason than to alleviate, lessen suffering. He said, I teach one thing only, suffering and the end of suffering. So generosity toward ourselves, this desire to offer compassion and relief to the suffering that we hold, moves us towards practice. And this is how we accept that gift. This is the first step of being of benefit in the world. I cannot give to others if I'm not giving to myself. So we know this, we hear this all the time, but I'm going to let the Dalai Lama say it. If you don't love yourself, you cannot love others. You will not be able to love others. If you have no compassion for yourself, then you're not capable of developing compassion for others. So that's very definite. And we don't always agree with that. I know I don't always agree with that. So I want to bring in another great teacher, Ayakema, who kind of says the same thing and spells it out a little more, with a few more words, and a concept that I think is very important. So she says, if we don't begin with ourselves, we have no way of actually truly loving others. Very often people say, and mean it quite sincerely, that they find it difficult to love themselves, but they are happy to love others. It's a myth, says Aya. They love others of whom they approve, but not unconditionally. Because that's what we're talking about here, is that unconditional love. We have first to love ourselves unconditionally before we have the same open heart for all beings, she says. We have first to love ourselves unconditionally before we have the same open heart for all beings. Loving kindness is just that, unconditional love. We do not lose our discrimination, for this would mean losing some of our intelligence, and this would be a great disaster. What we lose is our judgmental attitude toward ourselves and others. We take away the fences. We take away the projections. This is a journey of generosity. We go from receiving to giving to others, to giving to ourselves, and ultimately giving to all beings, not discriminating anymore, offering love boundlessly, no separation. But as the Dalai Lama and Ayakema make very clear, we can't bypass this step of giving to this one right here. And that's hard work sometimes. So we serve the world by starting with ourselves, with faith that there really is no separation, that we are all together in this experience of being human, being sentient, and that how we treat ourselves is how we treat others. So we always have this lab really close by, this laboratory, this test case, very close at hand, that can clue us in on how we are really treating others. Because how am I treating myself? If I really look. The Dalai Lama said generosity is the most natural outward expression of an inner attitude of compassion and loving kindness. So I'm focusing on gifts and giving, and we've been talking about this particular gift of the practice, generosity and also receptivity. But there are many gifts of the practice. Generosity is one. We give them to ourselves and we share with others. So other gifts of the practice can be found in the paramis. These are 10 qualities of heart and mind that it said the Buddha and all beings are called to develop to fullness. It said the Buddha took thousands of lifetimes to bring these to fruition, to full fruition, to perfect them. And so I think of these as gifts of the practice because they show up for us the more we practice, the more, and that doesn't have to just mean meditation, but just being present, just being awake and aware. Yeah, there's a softening there. There's a love that starts to happen when we pay attention. So generosity is the first of these gifts. And then there are others, treasures that we uncover and that come into being through this practice. So sila, or integrity, our ethical integrity, our capacity, intention and capacity to act in the world with harmlessness and also to be of benefit. Renunciation, which is the intention of practice of letting go, seeing through and releasing aversion and greed and the objects of aversion and greed. Wisdom, this experiential knowing, insights into reality, seeing what's really happening, just waking up little by little. Energy, which is fearlessness, confidence, determination to continue, to persist. Patience, endurance, composure, truthfulness. Spiritual life thrives on truthfulness. It's nothing without truthfulness. And loving kindness that we've already talked about, this antidote to fear and anger and selfishness. And then equanimity, which I talked about 2 weeks ago, the steadiness of heart and mind, ability that we gain through practice to to hold the joys and the sorrows of life without becoming unbalanced. So each of us in this Zoom room has a practice of one sort or another, and probably many practices. And maybe you don't call it a practice, maybe that sounds really formal and weird. But chances are you're investigating reality and you're learning how to work with yourself and others skillfully, or you wouldn't be here. Chances are that you've been practicing for a long time, because this is what people who care do. We can't not do it. So just for a moment, I just want to ask you to reflect on your practice or practices or ways of being or wholesome habits or whatever you call it. So it might be in the Buddhist tradition or another tradition or just something you know for yourself. And just reflecting the gifts of your own personal practice. You know, maybe you meditate or chant or do walking meditation or loving kindness. Maybe you just have a smile for everyone you meet. Maybe you give of yourself through service. Just reflecting and appreciating for a moment the different ways that you might practice during the week. And then reflecting on the gifts, the fruit of your practice. How does it come back to you? Do you appreciate it? What does your practice allow you to bring into the world, to give? Maybe some of the paramis. What does my practice allow me to bring into the world? What is the gift that I can give through my practice? And then what am I receiving? What am I receiving? What's coming back to me? Or what's happening inside from these efforts and care? So giving has its own rhythm and growth. We receive from others, we uncover and experience the joy in giving to others, and we learn to give to ourselves with grace and receive with grace, and ultimately break down that separation between giver and receiver to a place where there is just generosity, receptivity. So in the Mahayana tradition, there's this beautiful practice that reflects this kind of heart space, this no separation zone, the Bodhisattva vow, and we've talked about it a few times this year, and many of you know these type of vows and have taken them. One formulation is this: sentient beings are numberless, I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to put an end to them. The Dharmas are boundless, I vow to master them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable, I vow to attain it. It's a very tall order, infinite. I vow to save numberless beings. I vow to put an end to inexhaustible delusions. I vow to master boundless dharmas, meaning teachings. To me, the infinity of the quests and the vow, the intention to complete them, are a symbol of absolute purity of heart and resolve. The heart that says, no matter what, I will offer myself until all beings are free. This heart that knows no separation between itself and every other living being. Infinite vows invite the strength of a boundless heart, which is this heart of loving kindness that we keep talking about. So this full maturing of giving, receiving, giving to others, giving to oneself, and finally giving to all beings, realizing no separation, giving infinitely from a boundless heart. Is that possible? So the great spiritual masters tell us, yes, this is possible. People who have lived their entire lives and maybe many lifetimes doing just this, offering the gifts of a boundless heart. So we are worthy. It's possible. We can move in this direction. So I want to close with an inspiring poem by Dana Faulds. And this one is called Awakening Now. The moment your eyes are open, seize the day. Would you hold back when the beloved beckons? Would you deliver your litany of sins like a child's collection of seashells, prized and labeled? No, I can't step across the threshold, you say, eyes downcast. I am not worthy. I'm afraid, and my motives aren't pure. I am not perfect, and surely I haven't practiced nearly enough. My meditation isn't deep, and my prayers are sometimes insincere. I still chew my fingernails, and the refrigerator isn't clean. Do you value your reasons for staying small more than the light shining through the open door? Forgive yourself. Now is the only time you have to be whole. Now is the sole moment that exists to live in the light of your true self. Perfection is not a prerequisite for anything but pain. Please, oh please, don't continue to believe in your disbelief. This is the day of your awakening. So that's Awakening Now by Dana Faulds. So let's just take 1 minute to let the words settle. What's needed can land, and what's not needed can flow on, trusting our process. Okay, so anyone like to share any thoughts about gifts of the practice or your own experience or any questions, anything that's up for you? On that note, it is so lovely that all of us were here, and I thank you so much for coming and practicing together, and lighting a little Buddhist candle on Christmas together. And I want to mention that next week Mary will be with us on the 1st, and it's often a day when people like to practice, and so hope that that fits with your plans. And just to share the merit, which is this practice, another practice that we have of recognizing really that what we do together as a sangha, as a group of people practicing together, really is a gift to the world at large. And so we create that intention of giving our practice, the benefits of our practice, to all beings. And so may all beings benefit from our practice. May they feel worthy. May they know their gifts, and may they receive the gifts of others that will heal and bless them. And may all beings in all realms know this and feel this, and may all beings awaken. Thanks, everyone, and have a beautiful evening.